Hi, I'm Susie Tyler with the Texarkana Magazine, and we're here with Nicole Brisco, an art teacher at the Pleasant Grove High School. Welcome, Nicole. Would you tell me how you became interested in art?
Even as a child, I can never remember a moment in my life where I was not creating or making. Even at my mom's feet, in the end of the day from school, I would be down and coloring. So it's always been a part of my life. I've always known I was artistic. It wasn't until I went off to college, and I was originally a pre-orthodontics major, and I'd taken some art classes to kind of give me a little bit of a place to let go, and I found a lot of joy and pleasure in that. So I felt like in my life I really wanted to reflect the joy and the happiness that I felt, and I wanted to continue that into my own professional career.
How does art play a role in your family?
I would say that it plays a huge role just because of the fact that I think being an artist and an art teacher, it has given me an advantage as a mother to some degree, because I really don't ever find a time in my life where I'm not using art to at least like make some adventure or create something fun for the kids to do, or be able to help them to learn how to become more creative, because I think that's such a skill set that a lot of kids don't have these days. So, I mean, my kids know me as an artist and an art teacher. They know me as mom, but they definitely see that in the house as an influence.
Which artist do you think has influenced your work the most?
Well, early in my career, I mostly did figurative work. I mostly did drawing and painting, and so a lot of my early inspirations were different figurative artists like Alice Neal and some other contemporary figurative artists. But the truth is, when you're an artist in a contemporary society with the Instagram and all the different sources you have, there's just a constant flood of imagery that's coming in, and so it actually, you couldn't pick one that is the point of inspiration. There's just so many things that are coming in that your brain's just constantly being saturated with ideas and techniques and styles. And so, I couldn't give one, although I have some favorites out there. I definitely couldn't give one because artists kind of feed me from different places.
So how do you bring out a student's creativity in their artistry?
So a lot of people think when they come into an art classroom that they're not going to be able to do art, or they're not going to be able to be creative. But the truth is that creativity, it doesn't have a recipe to it, but there are ways in which to help or teach students to be creative. And it's really important for you to give those foundational skills, just like you would give a foundational skill to a technique. And so a lot of that is from researching and, looking up things and reflecting on things and writing and making lists and, compilating imagery. And so to me, that's like one of the most important parts of being a teacher, is teaching those students how to find ideas so that their work is original and it's unique. To me, that's the foundation of being an art teacher. And so creativity and ideas, they're critical.
What age do you think a student should be introduced to an art class?
Oh, as young as they can be. I think, from the beginning, that's the first way that children really communicate. They have their cues, but then they start, making marks on a piece of paper. But as early as they can, I think all children can be pushed to be more creative. And I think if you start them younger, I think that reflects not just in their artistic skill, but their academic skill, because they learn how to problem solve from a different point of view than a student who is a non-creative student. So I think there's benefits from it all the way around.
So you've had a lot of shows that shows your art personally, and we want to talk a little bit about you. Yeah. Tell me which show that's most memorable to you.
Probably the most memorable show that I have was a show that I did in Hot Springs at a place called the Art Church. It was my first real solo show in which I was able to kind of showcase and kind of start building my style of work, what it was going to look like for Nicole Brisco to show something. But the one that I feel has been most significant was actually one of the last shows I did. Not the last, but one of them was a show out at Texas A&M. I showed about 90 pieces in that show, and it was the first show that I'd ever created that I realized how prolific I could be and how powerful in terms of what I could produce in a period of time, even with children and a job. It came quite naturally to me, even though there is stress and it can be very difficult when you're doing something like that. It came naturally, and so I did feel like, God's gift in that sense that He was kind of guiding me and helping me to do that with all the other stresses I had in my life.
What is your favorite thing about being an art teacher?
Mostly the relationships. I love that students make art and make beautiful art and award-winning art and they go on and do great things, but the relationships are what I cherish the most. I keep up with so many of my students. I mean, I'm thankful for social media because I can keep up with their faces. But the truth is, I keep up with them on the, every year I talk to students and what they've gone on and done with their life. And now I'm able to see them have children and get married. This year I was able to go to 2 weddings. One of those weddings in which the 2 people that got married met in my art room, and I saw their love grow.
Oh, that's cool.
And so that part of it, I mean, it's very emotional actually as a teacher, because it's you feel the heart of a kid, and you're able to see them grow from 14 to 18 years old. So you almost feel like a parent or a mom or something to some degree. They feel like part of your family. So when I refer to them, I have to separate my kids, because I have my children, but then there's my kids,
right.
And that's who I have here at the high school.
How do young students show their artwork?
Well, I mean, we here at the high school, we give them lots of opportunities. We do so many national and state competitions where the kids are able to show their work. In fact, some of my students' work is being shown right now in Virginia through the National Art Honor Society. They selected around 90 students in the country to show, and 8 of those students came from Pleasant Grove. But then also we give them the opportunity to have professional shows here at the high school. Each year we show about 500 to 600 works of art at the high school at one night. And it really gives them the opportunity to get that feeling of what it would be to have a professional show. And I run it that way, like a business. I want them to see the business of how, someone would actually show their work and be successful in the art world.
Do you remember when you sold your first painting and what it was?
That's an interesting question. I was trying to think back to that. I'm sure my mom paid me $1 or $2 when I was a little kid for something. But I would say my first piece that I sold was probably back in my senior show for college. When you graduate from college with a degree in art or art education or art history, you do have to have a show. And I do remember one of my professors, I believe, bought one of my pieces, and I took such great pride in that. I'd never, made money off of something that I was passionate about and really found a lot of joy in doing. And so that's where, all that kind of starts coming together, because just because you're an art teacher doesn't mean you're also going to be an artist. And so I've carried both of those worlds kind of simultaneously through my life.
Do you have a favorite piece of art that you did that you just would not part with?
Yes, I do. I did a very large series of drawings. They're very, very realistic drawings, which is not something that a lot of people know me for. But after my mom passed away, I did a couple of drawings that related to the transition between earth and heaven. And those are in my house, and they're really the only pieces. I'm not terribly attached to my work. I let it go. I paint over it. I can have a painting that won an award 10 years ago, and I will paint right over it and not think a thing about it. But those 2 pieces in particular, they're very, very meaningful to me, and I don't let them go.
So it's the life experiences affect an artist more than anything else, do you think?
It depends on what kind of artist. I would say that I am an artist who reflects on what I see around me, culture, social topics that are going on in the world, things that I'm experiencing, because I think we're all more alike than we are different. And so all of that, to me, plays a part, because every piece of art that I make, unless I'm making it specifically for someone's home to be a decorative piece, every piece of art that I make, it has a purpose and a meaning. There's always an underlying meaning. And the reason I do that is because that's what I ask of my students. So if I'm asking them to have purpose and meaning behind what they make each day, I want to make sure that I'm doing the same.
What qualities encompass an excellent educator?
Well, I think one that is very flexible and moldable and willing to adapt with kids. I think that you can learn every type of ideology or every type of, book, statistic, anything you can imagine in education. But the truth is, you really have to be able to look at how kids learn, and kids have started learning differently. Even with my own children, it's really changed the way that I've perceived being an educator, because now I look at it more from the parent's point of view, if that makes sense. It's really important for me to think not just how it's going to affect the child, but also how the parent will feel about it. And so, those kinds of things I think have really pushed me and kind of engaged me in being a different type of teacher than I was maybe in, my early 20s. But just being flexible and moldable and being willing to learn from my students. I mean, that's kind of critical.
Okay, you have twins, a boy and a girl.
Yes.
Well, tell us how do they cope with your spending so much time drawing and painting?
You know, strangely, I actually don't spend a lot of time drawing and painting with the kids. If anything, they're kind of involved with it. I mean, I have had many bouts in my career where I was making work, and my children actually are down on the floor, and they might prep my surfaces for me or paint with me on the floor. And you know, it brings them pride to know they're helping me, but I also know that they're learning something about what they're doing at the time. But I try my best to keep my boundaries with my professional life separate from my family, even though they know that it's a very, very important part of my life. Even my children at the end of the day will show up here at the high school after they get out of school. But I try my best when I'm with them to keep my mind really focused on them and be present and, you know, very purposeful with my parenting.
And your husband's very supportive?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, his dad was an art teacher. It was just a fluke that we met, and I became an art teacher, but he's always been very, very supportive, not just of teaching, but also of the practice of art making. He often helps me build things, and, you know, my son might go outside and help my husband build frames while my daughter, Ava Gray, and I are in the floor, you know, painting or playing, you know, or doing something for a project that I'm doing. So, I mean, yeah, we definitely have that as part of our lifestyle. I guess that would be probably unusual for any other person. My husband and I, we've been married 25 years. We got married quite young. I was married at 19, a month before I turned 20. And so, you know, we've spent all of our young adult life together, growing together. And we waited a long time before we had children. I mean, I think we'd been married 16 or 17 years by the time we had the twins. And so, you know, a lot of our like parenting and the ideals and the things that we strive for in, you know, our home, luckily we were able to learn so much about that in each other. You know, we filled out life before we had children to some degree, and we traveled and we'd done all the things that we wanted to do really in life. And so really so much of our life is probably focused on our children now, and that's because it's our choice. It's what we love to do together. But yeah, my husband, he's quite artistic himself. He wouldn't say that. He's a chemist by profession. Okay. A pharmaceutical chemist is what he started in, and now he teaches engineering and robotics. So we're kind of on both ends of the spectrum, but I do believe that we both blend and complement each other to some degree. You know, most people would think an artist and a scientist, that's too far apart, but we're both creative thinkers. And so I think that in the house, you know, I feel like we kind of get each other.
Now, how do you encourage your students to be an artist, but also to be able to make a living at it?
Well, most of the kids that go on and make a living in art, they get a degree in something in particular, like architecture or design or graphics or commercial art. I mean, there has been so many different degrees I couldn't even begin to tell you. But I also have students that have gone on and become practicing artists, professional artists. And you would think that a lot of that would be mostly about the practice of here's how you're going to make art. But really what I think is kind of important is they needed to see me and my strategies in being a professional artist.
Tell me about some of your awards and accolades and something that's special for you.
Well, I've had quite a few special awards over the years, things that, you know, really I called changed my DNA a little bit. Probably the most significant one was being the National Art Teacher of the Year. Each year they select one high school art teacher in the country. And that was a big one for me. That was the most significant just because it really encompassed literally everything I had done as an educator and an artist in my life, because that's how they select people based on, you know, presentations you've done and curriculum you've written and books you've written and articles you've published, and then what you do in your classroom, you know, with your students. And so that was kind of the biggest award. The one that I also really loved was a few years ago I got the Texas Humanities Art Educator of the Year, which it is an award that is given to either an art, English, or a history teacher. And so whenever I applied for that, I had to actually write a story, an essay for it. And I won that award. And the thing was, I was so incredibly proud of that award because I had gone up against English teachers in that. And when I was in high school, I wasn't considered a good writer. And I guess the creative side of me allows me to storytell better. And so I have that confidence in the storytelling aspect, whereas when you're younger, you're more concerned about the, you know, whether you're getting it grammatically correct or so forth. But somehow among thousands and thousands of entries, mine stood out and I won that award. So I feel really proud because I feel accomplished outside of what I naturally, you know, do, which is draw a picture. Uh-huh. And in that, I had to write something, even though it was about my practice of being an art teacher.
Is it difficult to paint portraits?
I actually find portraits can, for me at least, a little easier than abstracts, because in portraits, it's mathematical. There's information there, and you have to be able to get that information correct. But with abstracts, you're constantly going from, left to right side of your brain, constantly trying to figure out what's going to look good together, and is it going to give the feel you're trying to get? But what is that feel? So you're kind of asking yourself questions all the time. Whereas when you're doing a portrait, you're looking at what you're looking at, and you've got to get it accurate. You can get more frustrated with that, but there is a sense of ease for me with that, because it's more laid out in fact.
Okay, you've tried something new. You're going to do a self-portrait that will be on the front of the Texarkana Monthly Magazine. Tell us about that. I've seen it, and it is awesome. It will be a really great cover.
Well, so whenever Cassie asked me to do the cover, I was excited just because she had asked me to do something different than's ever been on any other cover in Texarkana, which was to create a piece of art. And so, I was a little nervous, though, because at the same time, I could do this wonderful portrait, and then, other people are there to judge it. People that like art or might not like art, or, might not like what I've done. But the truth is, I thought if it reflects me as a mom and an educator, I felt like, that gave me the confidence I needed. But I did want to paint something realistic. But I also wanted to paint something that had some innovation in it and some creativity in it. So, hopefully when I finish it, which I'm not quite yet, but when I finish it, hopefully it'll have all those aspects that I kind of desire or wanted in my head when I first came up with the idea.
Well, Texarkana's in for a treat with this. I've seen not the finished product, but it's great. Is there anything that we have not covered that you would like to tell us about your family or about your job as an art teacher that I haven't covered?
Well, I think, as any working mom would say, there's challenges every single day. I try to find that balance between being a good mom and teaching my kids the things that I want them to know and learn. And I think being an educator, I definitely believe that God placed me as an educator before a mom, because He's revealed so much to me in the classroom about things that I want in my children, or, the way that I want them to grow up. And so a lot of those things have reflected in me as a parent, and, making sure my children are kind and gentle people, people that work hard, that are respectful. Every day when they get out of the car, I say, be good, be kind, and be helpful. That's my 3 words since they got out of the car in kindergarten. That's what I've said to them. And so, we do a lot of very fun things. I take my kids at least 4 times a year on what we call least of thee walks. And
now, what is that?
Least of thee walks, like biblical, being with the least of these. And so it's really, really important for me to take my kids into other people's shoes. I made my children walk from our home that's a ways out to a bus stop, and we took the city bus to the grocery store and got all of our groceries. It took us 8 hours to get a couple of handfuls of groceries to walk 2 or 3 miles. And then we, of course, had to ride the bus for 3 or 4 hours to get to the grocery store, and then by the time I got back to the house, it was about 8 hours later. But my purpose in that is to make sure that my children knew that when we passed the bus stop, that we don't just pass the bus stop, we see the people at the bus stop, and we know what that experience is like. And I think as being an educator, it's really important for me to take the things that I think some kids in today's society might be lacking. And make sure that those things are really solid, firm foundations in my own children. And then there are so many things that my children teach me at the high school that I'm like, man, I want my children to be like that little girl or that little boy, because, they really have such a head on their shoulders, and they are so kind and so polite, and they're so hardworking. So those are all things I think that kind of all have collided together, as far as being a teacher, a working mom, and a parent. Those are things that have come together and kind of made me who I am as a mom, as a parent, and as a teacher.
Would you tell us about the curriculum that you have here at the school and how you've cultivated that?
Yeah, so because I had been in the classroom for a while and I'd had the opportunity to present all across the country, I had these opportunities to see in different people's classrooms and see how they did things and take the good and the bad. I think that's something that a lot of people don't do is when they see something that they don't like, they just turn their head from it, as opposed to look at it and go, okay, how would I deal with that, or how could I transition that? But I've written curriculum for the state of Texas, and I've written curriculum for national books and publications over the years. Even the textbooks we use in our classroom, and this textbook is in a classroom in California right now.
Wow.
And if you open it up and you look at it, you'll see all kinds of Pleasant Grove work all throughout it. And it has Pleasant Grove's name on there. And so I've had the opportunity not only just create these dynamic opportunities for the kids, but also to refine my skills as a teacher so that when I'm in the classroom, I'm teaching them at the best of my ability.
You're a very talented artist, and I thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today and giving us an insight about who you are as a mother and a teacher. Thank you very much.
Thank you.